For experiment number 2, we're going to build a little bit fancier battery that's more realistic to the ones you have. So when we think about the battery that we just built with the lemon or potato or whatever it was with the various nails, one thing that we notice is that there is a particular metal, then there's another metal, and then there's some kind of medium in between that's acidic. We call that combination of nail, acid, nail to be one cell. And that produces a certain amount of potential difference. Depending on what combination you have, that could be any value, but let me imagine that that was 1/10 of a volt, 0.1 volts. So that means if I had one cell, I had 0.1 volts. If I was able to add a second cell, I would have an additional 0.1 volts, so that from the bottom to the top of this battery that I'm building, I would have 0.2 volts. And so on and so on and so on. I could have more and more voltage, which means I have more and more energy to do it, to have for my battery. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a multi-cell battery, and to do that, we are going to need our washers and pennies, and there's quite a few in there. You're going to want to get those out and sorted. I'm just going to build a couple of cells here for demonstration purposes. You're going to want the cardboard that we had, and on that cardboard, you're going to want to create circles that are bigger than, slightly bigger than your pennies and washers. We don't want those to touch when they're in there. So you're just going to cut out a whole bunch of little circles. You're going to want to cut out enough for each penny. We're going to want some sandpaper for the same reasons that we had before, that if there's a little bit of oxidization, which you can tell by there being some discoloration, you can just sand it really quick to clean it up, but you may or may not need that. We're going to want our voltmeter to measure voltage like we did before. We're going to want a couple of wires, and you're going to want these bulbs. Now these bulbs are LED bulbs, and they're slightly different than the incandescent bulbs we had before. When we had the incandescent bulbs in our circuits, we didn't need to worry about which way we hooked them up. LEDs, however, are different. They do actually have a polarity, and we have to worry about which way we hook them up. And the way that you can tell to hook them up is that you're going to look for the lengths of the little lead wires. There's going to be a longer wire and a shorter wire. It might be a little hard to see here, but if you look at one of them, you'll see one is longer and one is shorter. The longer wire is the positive wire, and you want to keep that in mind. I'm going to want some form of acid. I took my lemon, I just juiced it, and I put it in the little cup we provided. And you can see I have a couple pieces of that cardboard in there soaking. You're going to want to let them soak. And you're going to want your aluminum foil, and from your aluminum foil, you're going to want to just cut a little strip that's going to act like one of our electrodes. So here's how we build our battery. I'm going to lay down my electrode. You may also want a paper towel or a towel nearby, because this can get a little messy. So I'm going to put down my foil. I'm going to put down one of my pennies, and then I'm going to grab one of these pieces of cardboard that are soaked in. Okay. And I'm just going to lay it on top. And then I'm going to take one of my washers and grab it, and I'm going to make sure that my washer doesn't touch the penny underneath. So that's pretty key to make sure you don't do that. And that is one cell. I have metal, acid conductor, metal. I'm then going to use my voltmeter, and I'm going to do before. I'm going to start at my lowest setting. I'm going to take one of my probes and touch the aluminum foil, and I'm going to take my other probe and touch the washer. Now notice it's off scale, which means it's too much voltage. So I'm going to go up to my next scale like we did before, and I'm going to touch one and touch one. And I'm going to see that I have 0.938 volts, and I'm going to write that number down for one cell. I'm also going to see, can I make one of my LEDs light? And notice that when I hook this up, when I touch the foil to the positive, that's the copper side, and the washer to the negative, that I have a positive voltage, which means that this foil in is indeed positive. So I can take one of these wires and hook it up. I'm going to hook that up to the positive lead on my LED. And then I'm going to hook up the other wire to the negative lead of my LED. And I'm going to kind of try and get this flat. I'm going to touch this other lead to the other end of my battery, which is the nickel, and see if my LED lights up, and it doesn't. That's okay. LEDs need a certain amount of voltage before they'll light, and we may not be there yet. So I'm going to add a next cell. To do that, I put the copper penny directly on top of my nickel washer. I add my next little piece of copper, my next soaked cardboard, and then I put my next washer on top. And when I test my voltages, I see that indeed I have more voltage. I have 1.7 volts now. And now I can try my LED and see if it lights up. And it doesn't. Again, that could be okay. You're going to want to try all of your LEDs because remember I told you that the different LEDs are different colors, which means they need different voltages to make them light. So you'll go through this experiment and do everything. I will want to see if you can get the LEDs to light, and if you can get them to light, do they get brighter as you get more and more cells? And you're also going to record the amount of cells that you have in your battery.